She can show us what she looks like. She
Probably
just do her
force
hair.
ear straight.
Okay, I think it's a little after 5. And I see Jenny and Andrea's down below. She must not be on video. Who else do you think is going to be on?
Like I said, my expectation was that Leanne lost, join. She didn't tell me that she would not, but I'm sorry.
Well,
I think we can start.
go along. Okay, purpose of this work session is to exchange ideas and keep each other up to date as far as what's happening with the theater. And talk a little bit about the future. Kurt, you're the only one in the room. Kurt Newbauer is in the room.
That's correct.
You're the only one in the room. Everybody else online. But first, I want to congratulate you on a great demolition job.
Well, thank you. I thought everybody'd be pleased, and it sounds like we had all the authorities out there the other day, and everybody agreed it was done. So I'm very happy.
Well, I think Kevin can address that. I think there was a question about structural.
Yeah, we might as well go ahead and check a box right now. So there was a question by Diane Hanson about the relationship to the building with Bourbon Street. A little bit of communication, and this happens, but we were able to hold up. Dora held up. We got Adam Combs, the building commissioner, down, took a look. It's a very interesting relationship between those buildings, but Adam believes, and he has provided a report, which I sent to Diane Hanson. I just got it at 4 o'clock. I'll send it to the council. Those relationships of the building, they actually abut with one another. They don't actually have a sister wall. So that was kind of interesting to hear. And Dora was very sensitive in the demolition. He was able to peel it back and leave part of that abutting wall there for a safety measure until there was no reason to take it down. He did an excellent job. And there is a small gap between those two abutting walls that really demonstrates that relationship. There was also a structural I-beam that came across, and they had cut, when they put that I-beam, they cut into sort of the facade of Diane's building. To rest it simply, there are large stone pillars coming up, probably an extension of those footers, coming up to rest that I-beam, so they took that second floor load upon it. Diane was concerned about that. Adam said absolutely no structural relationship to your building. It was purely with the theater, but in articulating that relationship, you came to realize that the building at Bourbon Street is actually older than the theater. When you go by that wall, take a look, there is some masonry block, and I'm wondering if those buildings were ever connected, because it looks like from an archaeological standpoint, those cinder blocks were put in later to block up an old passageway. Now, I'm not sure of that until I really get down there with the child, but I really think it's kind of cool. Bottom line is, Adam said you're good to go. Dora proceeded with great caution. I think Diane's happy with the results. They secured the site. They brought in sand today to kind of temper that foundation gap. And I think everything's a go. I'll share that report from Adam. I haven't had a chance to read it myself, but I will forward that to council.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm glad that Diane spoke up with her concerns. I think we responded very courteously and quickly to her, and the next morning we were able to straighten it out. So I'm glad. Just for the record, though, we had been in touch with Diane on several occasions before this started. I think she was just surprised that it started. You know, I mean, we didn't quite tell her the date, I guess, but we were so busy in the public sphere trying to tell everybody the date that, you know, it didn't dawn on us, I guess, to reach out to her.
Along those lines, since when these are checking boxes when we're there, I'm wondering, and I kind of approached Diane Hanson about maybe joining and being part of a committee or on the board. I also sent that to Leanne as an idea, and maybe that would help that form of communication a little bit. I know Diane's been involved in the community a lot in the past, but just some type of role or something like that. But she said she was open to the idea, but that's obviously up to you guys and your board to make that determination. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome, sir.
Kurt, what updates do you have for us?
We had a meeting with our consultants and architect this week. The consultants, web management, one of the consulting, the people who are doing the needs assessment and then the business case, their role, they're moving into their second phase after the needs assessment. So the second phase for them is looking at comparable theaters in the region that would be operating in a similar fashion and maybe be fundraising in a similar fashion in order to give us some ideas about how to go about that. And also looking more towards grant opportunities that might exist in the state or even federally that we might be able to do. So that's their next role. And so they finished up their needs assessment and we did finalize that, agree on that. So we have a concept of what needs to be in the building based on our current needs as they're defined. And so that set of information has been given to the architects and theater designers, and they have started their second phase, so to speak, on doing some layout work and conceptualizing how the space will be filled. So that's our current status. So both arms of that consulting group are working. And as far as the site's concerned, I think we're buttoned down for now until we do have geotechnical. We've got somebody coming in to do 4 boreholes for geotechnical review, see if we can put it in the basement.
Is this the same group that did the needs assessment? This the same group that did your public survey?
Yes.
Pardon?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we hired them all the way last year, at the end of last year, and it's one full scope study. So all of these consultants I'm talking about are all under one contractual agreement with us, and that is being led by SRK Architects out of Boston.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you learned on your public survey?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think the first thing to say, and it's probably somewhat disappointing at first blush, but then not once you think about it more, but a little bit disappointing in that it's just pretty plain obvious that having a single screen cinema is not really an effective use of space or even a remotely, highly used facility. I think we're learning that a little bit out of Plymouth. But our consultants made it very clear to us that trying to run any type of single screen movie theater would make absolutely no revenue. I'm sorry, we're a nonprofit, we're not making money, but would make no revenue at all and would really sit empty most of the time. So what they were pointing us towards very clearly was a much more of a community center, which would involve, of course, a theater that would allow for cinema and live shows, but also at least 2 multi-purpose rooms that could be used for classes, whether they be artistic. We would assume that most of them would be artistic classes, but I mean, it could be in the visual arts or the dance arts or whatever. And a lobby area that would be large enough to separate the theater from the street and allow some gathering space in front of the theater. And then also a certain amount of catering kitchen and another back office kind of stuff, so that we can have events in there like weddings or banquets and that type of thing. So we're still pushing very strongly to have a flat floored theater space so that it is more usable for a larger number of things, so it won't be an auditorium. And we'll be trying to use, and hopefully it's not too expensive, retractable type seating. So think of your bleachers at the high school, but much nicer. Yeah.
Kurt, I know
Right.
that the study will probably have you communicating some with the Reese. My understanding with the Reese is that they've struggled a bit with hiring performances because their stage width isn't quite wide enough for certain types of acts. And it's unfortunately eliminated a huge number of acts that they could bring in because apparently there's a width. And I'm wondering if you guys have had an early enough assessment of the design to know whether or not you'll be able to achieve that stage size. That I know the Reese has struggled. You know, from what I understand from some of the folks I've talked to there that I've worked with on projects in Plymouth, if they had been able to meet that certain requirement, they would have been able to, you know, program like another 40 or 50 acts that they couldn't accommodate. So I just wondered if that particular issue had come up yet in all of your discussions.
No, in fact, it hasn't yet. And I'm a little bit surprised because, you know, Brent Martin's our architect and he's on the board now at the Reese. So it must be in his mind. But we're also utilizing the third consultant in our group is a group called Schuler Shook. They are a nationwide theater designer. They're not architects. They work with architects to design theaters. And so they design the stage space and the auditorium space, that the acoustics, that type of thing. Again, the name is Schuler Shook. And we would certainly hope that they would also let us know those types of bits. But thank you very much.
Yeah, it was just something I know. I know the Reese, you know, had tremendous success on the fundraising end, but I think on the sustainability end, it's gotten a little bit tough for them this past year. So worth a conversation. I think, you know, Brent would definitely probably tap into that with you. But it was just something I was thinking about in terms of that. You know, I know adding that additional space is meaningful to you guys. And I just wondered if that particular stage width had come up yet.
Thank you. I will be sure to check on that.
Sure.
Is it still a concern if we were to have that extra 20 feet, or is it only with like the width that we have right now?
We don't know yet quite, Andrea. I mean, we have the 20 feet, so we're certainly designing to the 20 feet and laying out for that. And so we'll have to see what they come up with as far as stage sizes and ask the question. You know, is this a limiting size for some reason? Now how big is the Reese for people? Does anybody remember? Isn't it?
Seating capacity?
Yeah, isn't it like 100?
It's pretty close to that because the width on it's 42,
the depth is 70 something. I think if memory serves well.
It's been a while, sorry, but yeah, it would be close to 110.
Yeah.
And that's guess.
Yeah, I certainly would expect that our auditorium and our seating capacity is going to be smaller than the Reese's. My guess, anyway, at this point, that's not final in any way. But that we have the ability to design the stage space as necessary to make sure that we don't give ourselves undue limitations. You know, the Reese, of course, was very much constrained in their desire to renovate an existing structures. So it gives us a bit of leeway.
Pardon me, are you Leanne?
Yes,
Yes, welcome.
thank you. I'm sorry that I'm late.
I'm Bill Clevenger. I'm on the council. Sal Ricciardi, Dan Muir, and Jenny Monroe is.
Yeah, we've met before.
Okay.
Nice to see you, Michelle. Or Leanne, sorry.
What's the current idea or thought about the roof? Is there still going to be any sort of dining on the roof or any sort of activities on the rooftop?
Well, I have to say, early in our thinking, you know, as people were just throwing things on the table and we were having a lot of fun, you know, the thought of something on the roof really got people very excited. Number one, because it would keep people there and it would be an exciting space, we think. But it would also be a revenue producer for the theater. And so we've held on to the idea, but whether or not it's going to go on the roof or it might become part of the second floor, or it might just be unrealistically expensive for the revenue that it would produce. We're not sure yet. So that question is still open, but I'm sure your question comes somewhat from height restrictions and we're of course very aware of the height restrictions and
Well, that really wasn't my thing.
Okay.
But it will be, it's a flat roof, obviously.
yeah, I'm sure it'll get that.
Are we able to obtain a structural engineer after demolition to look at that wall? Because I know Dorn mentioned that he was covering one of it. I think his structural engineers just to secure and validate that that wall is secured. Is that something that's happened or still continue going to happen, or is that?
That's part of his plan before any digging happens,
Okay.
because that, yeah, he has that built in his process.
For the,
Yeah,
but on the back on the digging side, when they start looking at foundational work.
Right, exactly.
thank you.
So
Just wanted to
that wall
clarify.
is gonna stay.
Right. So
Thank you.
they did not disturb soil next to that wall.
No,
Too
they
much.
did not. No.
They were very adamant and very careful about not doing that because of not knowing how that foundation rests and how it works. And so before we move into any further digging or any work, we would know
Thank you.
how that foundation is situated and how we work with it.
Just in case the question were to come up, I'd like to be able to, and I obviously would direct them towards you for further information. Thanks.
Are you planning to do anything with the wall as it is now?
We would have to check with Doru, I keep saying his name backwards. And he certainly is responsible for making sure that the wall is weatherproof and stable for the period of time until we, commence construction. So that is his responsibility. It's in his contract, and he is taking it very seriously. So.
Because I think that's one of the things that I know I did, and I've heard other people say that that wall was protected as long as the old theater was there. But what's going to happen before new construction starts? Is that wall going to be affected by weather, or are they going to do something to that wall?
Well, like I said, when we developed the request for proposals and the contract for the demolition, we very specifically added a exposed wall care and take care, section. That's a whole exhibit in the contract, which explains that that wall needs to be protected from the weather, and it needs to be protected for not just a week, but some period of time, until we get construction started. Primarily from my own experience, what the biggest problem would be at the cap of the wall and the ability of any weather in order to get down from the top. And he knows that, and he's capping it. But we've also found out that
The rubber roof from.
right,
Sorry.
I think it's already covered.
It is covered
for the most part. And
Bourbon Street.
Bourbon Street, and now we're finding out that it's their own wall.
Yeah, yes,
So it was never reliant on the theater to cover it
yeah.
in the first place. So I think we're in pretty good shape, but yes, it's certainly part of the responsibility of the demolition contractor to protect that wall.
That was part of Adam's statement, was that wall, Bourbon Street, stood for quite a long time before the theater was built. He thinks it was an independent wall for a while. And he's also in his initial assessment, had a great deal of confidence in that eastern wall of the old theater that was left there. But like you said, I'm appreciative of the fact that you guys are going to secure on that in the contract. So.
They let us know that the theater was built in 21, right?
Yeah.
So then you believe the other buildings.
I and Adam as well believe that building was built first, just by the relationship of it. Because you have cuts made into that building that were post dated. So coming from the
Yeah,
theater.
let us know. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating to know that. It's hard to determine for sure 100% what the gap is between the builds, right? And sometimes it can be false reads that they're cut later in, almost like a pit effect in the dirt. Find a Timex watch from 2000 BC. Somebody cut it down and threw it in there. But yeah, it's interesting to take a look at.
Well, there were the houses up on the hill on Lakeshore there. Some of those were built in 1910.
Mhm.
So I think there was building along that shoreline as early as 1910. And I think there was one, because Grant and I used to own one of those, and I think one of them was a couple of years older than ours. So I could see there being some, you know, building along there. And there was the old hotel that was up on Harding Court up on the hill that would have dated back to then as well. So I could imagine that there might have been some
Thinking-
storefront there.
Yeah,
It was certainly a busy town at the turn of the century.
it was that depot, that era stuff. I love it.
Even in Culver, Indiana.
Yeah.
Kevin, I was going to ask, I know we didn't get the successful response on the grant application. Have we received any feedback from the regional folks on that? I'm only asking just from a perspective of if they are looking more, you know, the thinking was an arts and culture project, and it seemed to fit that bill so well with the theater. And I'm just wondering if we've heard any feedback, because from my understanding, no one in Marshall County received any of those dollars.
I love the delicate way that you phrased that. Thank you, Jenny. We did not get the Reading grant. Some of the initial feedback is correct. From what we're hearing, and this is all unofficial, no project in Marshall County received funding. What the significance of that is, I cannot say because I've not been told. I'm not that connected. One of the things that I think resonates with me, and it was something that Matthew Selmer said, and I recorded it down during a one Marshall County meeting, and I think it may be applicable here, is that there's a distinct line between art and culture as a way of building community within itself, or whether or not you're using that for not an insidious, but a secondary purpose to help drive downtown development or economic development. Obviously, economic development was part of this condition. I would wonder, and one of the questions I would ask, Jenny, and it would be a question, is, was there too much of a design element in terms of an arts and culture district? My initial answer is no. I felt like we wrote a strong grant. So I don't think that was one of the reasons we were excluded. I think we covered and checked a lot of boxes. We were able to provide venues. We were able to provide historic restoration, blight removal. We were able to provide economic opportunity for artists. We were able to extend the South Bend Elkhart footprint down to its southern limits in terms of art and culture and providing a venue or a hub for that. I think we still have a very strong project in front of us. And I would venture to say it was just a competitive field this year. And there's a pecking order to these things. I still have a great deal of belief in the project itself. I think we continue forward. It's going to require some realignment, but we're able to secure some grant money. And I think that venue parking, if you were down there last weekend, parking is an issue that has not gone away. The park renovation in the public space, if you were there over the weekend and saw the families utilizing it, you come to realize that the validation is found in the use for the project. So I still have a great deal of confidence and want to move forward and get us ready for the construct. I want to get us ready when it's time to construct and give for the grant again. And that's where we got to live. And it has implications for the theater. Maybe puts a little heavier, if you don't mind, maybe put a little heavier emphasis on that fundraising for design up front. But that's where we can re-strategize and
yeah,
move.
one of the reasons I'm asking, Kevin, is because several of the and Dana, you might be able to speak to this too. A lot of the projects that went into the United Way round, and most of them were capital projects, either disqualified themselves or decided not to move forward because of the private investment side of it. So I know there's still funds available to Marshall County through that grant. And I can talk to Linda to see if our Lakeshore Drive corridor project or this project with the theater being part of it would qualify. Okra would absolutely love this theater project, but I don't know that we would get through another income survey. We've certainly passed the window of time where we could apply for another community center type of building. And granted, because this would serve an entire community, that would help us on an income survey, because we could conduct that over the winter months, and it would be more community wide. I just don't know. We've passed 2 of those and gotten pretty lucky, but I don't know with our income levels and property values being so high if we could get past that income survey requirement. But Okra would just absolutely love the theater project.
Yeah, and maybe this leads to the next topic, what you're talking about, Jenny, but I'd like to approach the council, and since we're in the same room together, there's a lot of communication that's going to transpire in the next couple months. And especially with design coming in, if we're getting the first kind of design elements and discussions about 20-foot and what the design is going to look like, height, there's a lot of conversation about funding and grants and trying to work together. I'm asking council and I'm asking the board here, is it mutually beneficial to form a joint committee and appoint members from both teams on that committee so the communication is clear, frequencies of meetings and decisions are being discussed prior to rather than after the decision? And I asked that question for both parties here.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we, there's, with the funding coming out through Lilly and potentially other ready sort of grants, which would take a match from the town and some sort of partnership, I think it would be a good idea for us to at least have a liaison working with the theater group, to keep the redevelopment commission and the council sort of on the ready. And if we know there are capital projects, grant projects coming through the state, we would want to jump on that for, sponsor the nonprofit, because they could serve as a subsidiary on that type of grant. And we're particularly good at them. So I think it would be great to have, especially as you're getting into that design phase in the early part, there's still plenty of time to apply for grant dollars that would come out in the next year. And yeah, it may not fund an entire build, but if it gets you, $1 million of the pot, that would be helpful. And maybe build some momentum and excitement in the community from a donation standpoint.
Jenny, Leanne is,
Yeah, just a quick
want to
question.
add something?
How often do you anticipate looking at grant funding for the town, outside of the theater? Anyway, I mean, I know you guys do grant applications on different occasions. And I'm just to answer your question, Kevin, because I know we'll look at grants that will be available to, 501c3s.
Yeah.
So that
Mhm.
we'll, but then I know whatever we're drafting for those, then making information available to you guys to be able to use for purposes of, town grants, like just we coordinate for sure that way.
And I think I'm wondering how to facilitate that. I guess it was a question.
Yeah.
How do you facilitate moving forward with communication about line elements, about everything that's about ready to happen?
Yeah.
And what's the best way to do that?
I mean, maybe to get started, like I was researching some grants today, again, for 501c3. So like, let's say the first of those that we fire off and we just give you guys the copy that we submit so that you have the same, and anytime we do something updated so that there's the new design information, for example, and that's shared so that the town can use it also.
Yeah, and I think we'd want to write support letters for your grant applications, whether it's town or a combination of town and redevelopment. Drum up that kind of organic on the ground support. And even if it's a match dollars toward, you're going to score a lot more points on any of your grant applications if you have a partnership. And I think that side of it would be if we know you're going after a grant that we can help with in that respect, I think that would be a powerful bonus on the grant application. And I know because we've talked about the theater in some of our planning documents, and some grant applications like Okra works this way. You get bonus points if your project has been part of a plan or regional plan. And our theater comes up in our comprehensive plan, and I think it comes up in our regional stellar plan. So that little detail alone could help you guys get bonus points on a grant application. So if we know you're going after one and you want us to participate, there may be requirements or bonus points on those grant applications that we could help out with, knowing we've had the theater as a desire of the community. And we've done enough public input along with your public survey that we could show any grant committee, this has been in the works a while and planned for and supported by the community, the town, etc.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Hey, Jenny.
Uh-huh.
Too. So when you mentioned United Way a few minutes ago, are you talking about the United Way Lilly grant cycle that's currently
Yes.
almost over? The top three?
Yeah. Because Marshall County really only ended up with 2 projects, Dana, and didn't use the full, whatever the one was, it 1.2 million or 2 million, or I can't remember. But so many of the organizations backed out. And Linda was telling me that they can probably get an extension and there may be another round of that. And to me, this project would, being a multi-purpose building and some of the things that they're talking about programming and the fact that they've already done some public engagement, immediately puts them a step ahead of a lot of nonprofits, that would go after those dollars.
Yeah, most of those backed out because they couldn't match.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, if we had strong educational, which we already do, but
Yeah.
that
And it's really a great fit if you think about it. The same way it would be a great fit for an Okra grant. You've got the arts and culture, but you've got the multi-purpose use. You're targeting literally the entire community. You've got potential educational programming, arts programming. I mean, it just really fits the bill for that type of grant.
Marty, you were gonna say something.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. I'm thinking from a redevelopment perspective, and thinking long-term, this theater is just the first of what I think will be several changes in that stretch. I'm thinking about the Bennett building. I'm thinking about some facade work that may, come down the line on the Rocky building. And I'm thinking your facade for this building will kind of set something, for the remainder or whatever comes after. And one of the things that we talked about in the grant was coming up with some design standards for that whole stretch that the theater would fit into and the park would respond to in doing some park renovation. So just an answer to your question, Kevin, about working together, I think that's an area where we work together and see if this isn't an opportunity to put together some design standards for that stretch.
When we did bring Indiana Landmarks in, they echoed the similar sentiment that whatever historic value that building had is long gone. And that the worst thing that possibly could happen is you try to bring something back to life, because choose a historical period. He said, fit it in the landscape, the streetscape. And I think, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think there's opportunity. He offered his advice and services too, to follow up, and he was eager to do so. He was so very excited by the whole idea. So I think we reach out to other assets too that are around for that conversation.
Well, we have in our spending plan for vision for a study on the park. And so I would recommend that we continue that study and include a, you know, a streetscape aspect to that. And just go ahead and, you know, with that work, provided the council is okay with that, you know, go ahead with that work. And then make sure that we keep each other apprised of what we're doing, because I think working together, we can come up with a better overall result for the town.
I think that design, and so what Marty's saying with the streetscape, if we do the utilities and the work that we need to do for parking and road in that area, that would come in handy. And for the, especially if we apply CCMG
Yeah.
coming down the line, some of these resources of design will come, having them ready, shovel ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think even when we look at that parking lot, you know, that we've talked about widening in the park to create a better parking situation, having the theater's needs in mind for the work we want to do along that corridor is really important, even from a side road parking situation. You know, our ordinance right now is just accommodating side roads as normal, that have been around for probably decades since I was a kid in Culver, but we may want to make some adjustments to that whole corridor based on the theater's needs, and based on whatever the design there is going to look like. And, you know, if it's a bigger building and it can accommodate more than what we've had in past years, we might want to adjust some of our side street parking to accommodate that. You know,
Generally, the street itself is much wider than it needs to be. And so if you take it down to the scale that it probably should be,
Right.
that gives you all kinds of options from parking.
yeah, yeah,
I think, I agree with Jenny. I think that you're thinking, I think with this opportunity, I think you take a look at golf cart parking and designate it, how many parking spots are taken away rather than having designated golf. There are so many simplistic little things. Let's try to avoid the unintentional consequences and see the opportunities that we have in front of us to knock out not just a small area, but understand the larger framework of how this impacts the area, I think is what you're saying, Jenny. At least that's what I'm hearing.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I
Agreed.
just want us to really, even the whole vibe of that area could potentially change with a gem like this. The same way upgrading our park has done. You know, that space has never been more activated than it is now. And partially that's Lake House Grill, you know, doing a lot of the work that they did. But our park has really had a ton of work in the last 8 to 10 years. And that whole space, Uptown Culver, has been activated in a way we've never really seen. So to sort of prepare for that, a new gem to be within that space, we may, it could have great impact, I think, in many positive ways, of course. But it might change how we perceive some of the park projects that we're talking about, especially the parking lot.
Yeah. Yep. That's very good.
Kevin, you have anything else?
Just so we want to make sure that we're on the same page. I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it, but next steps, public communication, because we're going to get questions. Theater here, theater gone. How are you moving forward with that? What would the messaging be that if we do get questions concerning the next step, if you will? I know we've mentioned that you'll have a design, or at least moving towards that. Excuse me, not, you won't have it, you're moving towards it.
Yeah.
Is there an estimated time that could be provided, or is that something you do not want to communicate at this point? That's perfectly fine.
Well, we certainly appreciate the work you put together, the preliminary work that you did a little bit. And you kicked over, that was helpful, and we were thinking along the same lines. We're not prepared to communicate that yet, just yet.
Okay.
But certainly our consultants are engaged and they're gearing up. So they have to give us schedules here pretty soon. And we can certainly share those now. I'm not exactly sure how to share that publicly. I mean, we reached out publicly through Town Garden Lake and through Pilot News and other news organizations and email lists and other things, because we very much wanted people to be aware that we were starting the demolition and that there could be some buzz about that. We got rid of most of the seats too. Amazing. Everybody got them.
I see there's a few.
Awesome.
They're going hot if you're still in the market. I got that appointment.
And so I think we'd probably do well to hear from you as to how it might be best to keep that kind of communication up. Now, we have a website. I also hope everybody's visited our website. We can certainly put a schedule, a very broad schedule there, but I'm a little bit worried about getting too detailed about it and getting expectations up when we're not ready yet.
I think, yes, and that's where I was going, sort of a liaison, some type of joint or a regular, a set time where we communicate.
Right. I think to answer that question, I think perfectly, in theory, perfectly happy, and we want to work with the town.
Sure.
We know that we're going to run into roadblocks that we're going to have a difficult time with. Lockstep with you guys. And so we very much want to be there with you. So
Yeah.
if
And I would,
it's- if it's meeting on a regular basis, that's perfect.
Okay. And with your permission, I have a couple contacts. I'm going to give a call. I hope to WSBT tomorrow, and believe it or not, I made a kind of a business decision inside my own head. Let's wait till she's down. Then bring them down. We can find a lot of old footage and pictures of what the theater looked like. Now that
We have a lot of pictures of
I-
it coming now too.
I think it would be a great story to kick off now that it's on the ground, and it needs to be noted how fast that baby came down and clean. I think that's worth the story in itself. With your permission, I'll reach out tomorrow if that's acceptable and let them know there's a story down here if they want it.
Be sure to put the website.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
I kind of appreciate the whole website approach, and you're embarking somewhat too on I'm assuming some fundraising, and so a little bit of secrecy about it is kind of going to be of intrigue to the community, and maybe even create that sort of allure that you can get with the campaign. And I mean, I like, as someone who went on our first date ever in that theater, it's kind of exciting for a lot of local people that have nostalgia with it. But also just, I kind of like I don't know, not knowing the exact details yet. And obviously all of us want to be part of it and supportive of it and connected to the project. So yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22 if you want to maintain some of that, mystery.
Yeah, I think we'll feed it out as we know it, and that may meet that kind of concept anyway, because we're still learning, we're still trying to make decisions and determine what exactly the next steps. And so we'll keep putting it out as we know it. And by the way, our fundraising activities have already started. The activities that we have committed to date, including the study and the demolition and the other work that we've done so far, is primarily been covered already through fundraising efforts. And so we're in good shape financially as well.
Thanks, Kurt.
That's great, Kurt.
We've got about another 10 minutes. Other counselors, Sally, you have any questions?
No, I think a lot of them have been answered.
Okay.
Everything I have is back to communication. Our town is very owner centric. We love our town. I did see a historic building in Kokomo one time that was taken down, and another building in place of that. And what they did, I thought was very effective, and maybe this is overkill. They had a very modest marquee sign out in front with glass, and it was just a narrative. Every month, they'd have a little poster of a small narrative of where they are in the project. And people could come by and just read it, and it seemed to be very effective. So if we had it down here, people eating at Lake House could stop by and look at that marquee and say, okay, here's where we are. and I'm not sure what the content of that would be, but it did serve and it answered a lot of questions. And people kind of felt like they were part of the project. So I just say that if that was a
That's a great
possibility.
idea, actually.
Again, maybe you.
Yeah, because people are strolling there, right? You know,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
it's something to look at.
Yeah, 2 or 3 paragraphs, here's where we are in the project, and you're gonna love it, wait till you see this, and they,
It might draw people like they update it regularly. They come to just see what it says, you know, if you don't,
Right,
if you don't. know
yeah.
stuff, you should
make a
come.
different color poster, so it doesn't look like the same yellow one last month. And this month, maybe in the following, and
Throw a QR code to the website on it and
One of
or
those,
the donor page.
yeah.
I think that's a great idea, Dana.
that is a great idea.
Thermometer, United Way thermometer out there.
Good idea.
We have a couple of citizens in the room, and this is a public hearing. Russ, you have any questions or comments?
I'm a little concerned about the fact that they're talking about a flat floor. You know, if someone like Kurt sitting in front of me when there's something going on the stage or a movie, I'm not gonna be able to see it. The nice thing about the Reese is it does have different stages, and if you sit in the back, no one's head is in front of you. So that would be, as a citizen, that would be my concern. The flat floor, visibility is gonna be an issue.
Dan?
Can address that. We're looking at, seating that is pitched, that will work on a flat that is retractable. It's nice theater seats that are,
Similar to the gym.
Yeah.
so you most.
I'm saying the bleachers in the
gyms,
gym.
Which
Yeah,
I hate
but
to
nice.
talk about, because the ones in the gyms,
That
you don't
helps.
want to sit on that in a theater, because they're like just the fiberglass.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so it's the same
Back and
concept
arms.
as you've seen those in gymnasiums where
No,
they
that-
come out, they're.
That would be
just
fine.
looking-
Anything like that would be fine.
Yeah, and
As
they're
long as
much
you can see,
more,
I can see over kid.
much more
head.
so than you would in the old theater with the pitched floor in there. It'll be much more,
That's a good
greater
answer.
vision.
Good.
inside of mine.
Thank you, Bill.
You have anything?
I'm just here to listen. Thank you.
All right, you're more than welcome to be here. Marty, anything else?
No, thanks.
Okay, what do we do next?
I think that the next step, if I heard you correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm a summary guy. What we've got right now is a building on the ground. We've got our update on the grant. It wasn't what we wanted, but it at least it's knowledge. We can move forward, start. So I think that it's not a liminal space right now, but Kurt says that they are going into design. They're transitioning. If it's possible, we would love to be able to see some of the surveys just for town's knowledge of some information that you guys gleaned and gathered. I think it might also be helpful thinking about that larger space in that area as we move into things. Getting some public feedback about it would be great for us. If that's possible, it can come in any format you so choose. I think the next step too is when updates on the design process, not necessarily a design in front of us, but just keeping us in the know on how that's proceeding with your consultants would be helpful for everybody. I think the third step moving forward is you're going to communicate what kind of needs that you have from us as you move forward. And I think it's a wait and see right now, but keeping the communicate. My fear, I guess, if I can express it, is that the line of communication that is becoming developing in the partnership somehow because of time and lapsing starts to dissolve and the communication doesn't stay active. So if we could communicate about public information on the feedback and updates on the design, that would be wonderful. And if it's appropriate, I'd be happy to reach out and continue that unless there's a need to form a joint committee or some type of joint committee for feedback, as Marty said, about design. And maybe we could start thinking about that as we move forward. Is that acceptable to everybody? And did I get that right?
Yeah, and I think the communication about any of your needs from a funding grant standpoint, we have been particularly good at winning grants, completing the work involved in grants. And I would hate for you to miss an opportunity where we could help you with that, whether it's, match or support letters or just in general narrative, history, plans we've written that the theater is mentioned in, just all sorts of those details. And I am the first to volunteer to say, if you want someone to review a grant, work on it with you, help you coordinate with the town, I'm more than happy to do that. Have been in that role many times for the town of Culver.
Very
Thank
good
you,
at it.
Jenny. That was gonna be one of the points I brought up. There were several things mentioned today and even an acronym that I don't know. So, if there are funds available or something that we should be chasing, we're less in the know about that than you are. So, if you want to take the lead and point us in a direction, we'd be happy. We did a great job, I think, with Kevin on the Ready Grant and Marty. And, we'd be willing to, take that material and turn it over into the next opportunity. Communication obviously is a big one that we're talking about, so we'll continue to think about how to that. But the one thing I had a question mark was these design standards. If there's going to be some type of design standards set out or some kind of guidelines and things like that, they're running out of time.
Right. I probably am misspeaking when I call it a design standard.
Okay.
What you'd like to do is a pitch book for developers and
Right.
say, this is, what we would like to see, and, the look and feel of the streetscape is really what I'm talking about when I say a design standard. I'm not talking about setbacks or fronts or things like that. I'm just.
Like aesthetic.
Aesthetic,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Has any of that been done, like with the park renovation? Was anything like that done
No.
before?
No.
And by, I don't want to call it coincidence, and Jenny, you may be able to speak in council, but you have Bourbon Street and you have Lake House that are aligned in terms of look to a greater portion, right? And I think that's, I don't know if that's the look we're going for, but they're aligned and there's an existing thing there. And how that harmonizes, because we're trying to create a neighborhood there and being able to harmonize that. And that's why I'm kind of moving towards having that joint, having that liaison, having some type of communication. So it's not a missed opportunity. So just.
Well, yeah, and I think of it more even in terms of zoning, like you guys are helping to create a really cool entertainment district, if you will, between a restaurant that has a bar, a pizza joint, a theater across the street, an activated park space. And that is an entertainment for Culver. That's sort of the entertainment block. So for me, from a zoning standpoint, it would be, with Bennett's building being empty, for example, do you necessarily want the type of business in there that some small towns have? We might want to have a zoning conversation that it fits in with that entertainment sort of district. Do you really want an attorney to move into that space and just bring 5 people to that block on a given day? Probably
Yes.
not.
The idea
Those are
would,
the things I think about from a zoning design standpoint.
Thank you. And thank you also for the letter of intent and the memorandum of understanding. We appreciate that very much.
And take you back.
Thank you all for
Thank you.
coming and joining us. I think, we've kind of, I feel we've accomplished quite a bit today, and, we've had some good dialogue, had some good questions. You know where we are. We welcome you and, I think we need to really look at the possibility committee. Maybe not decide it today, but look at something. And the most important thing is that, we communicate with you and you communicate with us. And the better communication, the smoother this thing is going to be. I think we're all in agreement that we want to see something there in the way of a theater. And I know there's a lot of public interest and a lot of questions, but I think the big question's been answered here in the last 3 days with a pile of dirt.
Is it really going to move forward? I think the answer is yes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
if nobody has anything else, it's about 6 o'clock and Well, thank you all for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks so much, you guys. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Hello there. So sorry that I.
Don't be.
Really